Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Shepherd's Corner. And this is your favorite show on a Thursday night. And yes, the Shepherd is here. And we want to talk about what is happening. So we have a conversation with the Archbishop today, and we're talking about a culture of disrespect. Woke up this morning to the news, Sandman, his wife, two security guards, dead.
Sea lots.
Two guys. This evening, breaking news, dead. This morning, another body washed up. This evening, more bodies washed up. What's happening? And so we want to start this evening, yes, we want to start this evening with a different kind of introduction. So, hang on to your hats.
Today, when I look around in this world, what do I see? I see footprints that man have left in the sand while walking through time.
I've already seen this world has come divided between race, color, creed, and class, and some of the things that Scripture predicts truthfully come to pass. Our country faces its darkest hour, and our people need us today more than ever.
They're crying, voices from the ghetto.
Somebody better pray.
Somebody better pray. There's a missing generation, and soon if we don't find them, they're surely going to find us one day.
And the conversation is this. We have a culture of disrespect. And the question on this culture of disrespect is this. Archbishop J, what are we doing about disrespect for life in our country?
When you look at the whole country, we're in trouble, eh? And I think we saw it in the headlines of the newspapers from Sunday till now.
Yeah.
So by last Wednesday, there were close to 300 murders for the year. And this really is a serious thing, because, we've just passed half year, and we reached the 300 already.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you consider that in the last 2 weeks, how many murders we've had?
This month alone.
This month, how many murders we've had? We're spiraling out of control.
Yeah.
And the murders are getting more intense, more brutal, closer together. Now, every citizen needs to be asking themselves some hard questions of themselves and of this nation. What are we doing? In 2008, we crossed a threshold. We had 550 murders for that year alone. And that was the highest number. Huh?
Yeah.
And then it started to come down, and we kind of oscillated between late 300s and 500s, early 500s. But why? In 2018, we were ranked the 15th nation in the world for murder.
The 15th
in the world
for murder.
In all the countries of the world.
And they have some plenty violent countries in this world, and we're up there in the top 20.
So per capita, we were ranked right up there. Now for me, this is very, very alarming. And that's what we're talking about. How do we understand what has happened to us? You know, many people have asked me in the last couple of days, how we get here? Well, that's a serious question. But the question really is, how are we going to get from where we are to where we need to be?
Yeah.
And are we willing and brave enough to identify where we want to be and do the hard work to get us there? One of the problems is that everybody wants somebody to fix the problem. And the solution to the problem lies with you, with me, and with you, and with every citizen of the country. Because it is not a problem that we can hire somebody to take the responsibility to fix the problem and us remain how we are and continue our business as we have been going. And that's where the problem is. That we want a police commissioner, a minister of national security, a prime minister, as this one, and that one, and the other one. And everybody has a role to play. And they have a significant role to play because they've been hired to do a job for the country. But you and I have a role to play, and that's where I want to focus. Let the experts get on the experts' business. But let us face some things about us, and let us ask some very hard questions. You know, basic respect. Have you listened to how people talk to each other in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah. I mean, you listen to it on the talk shows.
Yeah.
You listen to it in communities.
Yes.
You listen to it in families.
Yes.
You know, you listen to it in Parliament. In Parliament, when everybody is looking on our president, you know, she talk in Parliament, they kicks in. They kicks in because...
You know, that was a clip, so years back, eh?
I don't
They kicks in Parliament.
They kicks in Parliament. And there is no respect for each other from the highest echelons.
From captain to cook, we could say.
Yeah.
From captain to cook, we have a national problem of disrespect. And I think until we're willing to address that challenge, we can't address the other challenge also, which needs to be addressed. And that needs a different strategy. But I'm saying the solution to this challenge that we're facing is a national solution where every citizen has to be involved in the solution. And it starts with you and me. How are we speaking with each other? How are we speaking with each other? Are we speaking in terms where you know at the end of the conversation that I respect you and you respect me?
Even if we disagree.
We could disagree, but we could still respect each other. But many times people who agree disrespecting each other.
Lord.
It's not just that they disrespect when they disagree. You know?
Yeah.
They're agreeing and disrespecting each other. You know, it's really a fundamental problem that we're facing. It seems to be so pervasive, a force shaping the whole interaction, starting right in the family, going in the community, in the workplace, in the streets, in the nation. You hear it on all levels of society, and you hear it in all different kinds of ways. And that culture of disrespect, that's what we really have to address. And that culture of disrespect, I think, cheapens everybody's life. So we reached a stage now where a child disagreeing with a mother, I'm talking about a primary school child, and say, I hate you. How did we come to a place where a child could say those words to a mother, or a mother to a child?
Yeah.
It is in that disrespect, that we really are having the problem.
My thing is, I'm hearing you. So how do we at least begin to address this problem? Now, you're drilled down to the family. And I like where you're drilled down. You're drilled down to the family.
We had to go down to the family.
But we have struggles right there in the family. We have families that are so dysfunctional that how then do we come back home to the families? Because I read your article, actually more than once, right? And, you know, we were talking a little bit, you know, we were talking a little bit about singing Sandra's song,
Yes.
which came right up to me, and, you know, voices from the ghetto.
Gosh.
Right? Outside a siren, keep howling. Inside your belly, real growling. Police raid very often. Simpsons measuring a coffin. One night in bed, you're sleeping. The next night is awake, you're keeping. So you're praying to win the lotto, not to hear the voices from the ghetto.
Somebody better pray.
That is it.
Somebody better pray. There's a missing generation. And if we don't find them, they will find us someday.
Yeah, but for us to find that missing generation, it demands, like you were saying earlier on, okay, police commissioner, you have your work to do. National security
You have
minister,
your work to do.
But we also have our work to do.
And our work is in finding that missing generation, because that missing generation is finding us now. Eh?
Yes, dear.
They are finding us now. And that's the challenge. And when I talk about the levels of respect, disrespect in the street, you know, have you heard how parents talk to little children?
Yes.
Have you heard the kind of name calling?
But it's almost violent too.
And the level of violence with which they speak.
Yeah.
The way for some simple little thing, a child will get some clout and some hard words. When we bring up a nation with that level of negativity from childhood, then you're facing something that is ingrained in the psyche of a level of lack of human respect from you to me, from me to you, and therefore, who is going to respect whom? Because if in the family I grew up by disrespecting, if I turn on the radio station and I heard them obliterating the next person with words, if I see in Parliament the kicks in, and wherever I turn in the country, I see disrespect for people, then we have a problem. And the problem comes down to a problem of disrespect. And I'm not saying the problem is not in other places.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we don't have other things we have to address. But if we're going to do the addressing, let's go to root cause. Because the one thing we share across the whole country, and in fundamental ways, is this way in which we disrespect one another, and the way in which that disrespect leads to a kind of violence. First, a verbal violence, an emotional violence. Sometimes it spills out into a physical violence, and sometimes it spills out into an abuse. Sometimes it spills out into taking of life. But these are gradations up.
Mm-hmm. I was coming from Rosary Church a little while ago. I just had to do a service there at midday, and I was walking up, and I'd just been about by St. Mary's College. And as I reached St. Mary's College, I saw these young people coming down, boys and girls, you know. And I said, good afternoon. The young men told me, good afternoon. There was a young lady walking with them, and she just said, I know you. That was her response to my good afternoon.
Yeah.
An aggressive, I know you. But
We talked to before.
Right. But the boy said, that was strange. That to me, now, I would have expected, maybe the boys were giving that kind of talk.
Yes.
But the boys didn't. So it shows that it is reaching our girl children also.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And whereas the civilized is the boys, you know what I mean, as boys.
The boys go be boys.
The boys go be boys.
But when it is the girls perpetuating that and not the boys, that is even a harder one.
Yeah. And there I was walking up with all my vestments and so on, you know.
Yeah,
So obviously
they could see.
you know. So what are we talking about? And you know, and then there's this gang culture, you know, and you said that you were involved in gang intervention in the early 2000s.
Yes.
And what became clear to you was that too many gang wars started because someone felt disrespected.
You know, it sounds foolish, eh?
Disrespected?
I could give you story after story. One Sunday, we were moving from Gonzales to Laventille in a procession for the Fatima devotions. I just happened to have gone up to St. Barb's that day. Happened before going to the church to start the procession. And I see a team assembling in the house of the gang leader up there. I say, what's going on here? He says, war, Father. It's war. I talked to him for half an hour. At the end of half an hour, he shook his head and he said, Father, thank you. I just make up my mind. Please leave now and do not come back. It's war. I said, half hour. I use every persuasive bit I could do. You know, eventually I left. I told him, listen, we doing this procession. He said, don't worry, we're going to let you pass. After all they're gone, we're going to do what we had to do. Well, so said, so done. After we went, they shot up the whole community. It was bad. Nobody died, thank God. When I was leaving, I said, I'll call you. He said, no, I deleted your number from my phone. Don't even call me and don't come, because anybody who come up and down at this time, this is war, nobody have freedom to move. Well, the next Thursday, I got a call. I was so stunned. I said, hello, because I didn't look at the phone. It was a Me Too in them days. Hello? Yeah, Father. How things going? I said, hi, good. Who is this? He said, well, this is Sean. I said, well, Sean who? He said, oh, you mean Sean who? I said, oh, gosh, it's you? He said, yes. I want to talk.
He wanted to talk.
I was leaving the country next day. So I went by the gang leader whose community gets shut up. I went by him and I said, listen, he want to talk. Waiting. I spent 1 hour with him. This is now 6:40 in the evening. It get dark. I convinced him, this other gang leader who gets shut up, let's go and at least get ceasefire. Eventually about 6:45, he agreed, okay. If he would agree, I will agree. Again, me kind of gone up that hill. When I reach up and he opened the gate and he see me, he said, but you're coming through it. I say yes, and I remember the last words he said to me. Yeah. Leave here and do not come back.
Yeah.
The last words. We talking. The other gang leader called the phone of my partner who was working with me in this thing. And Sean heard the phone call. And he said, wait, that's him? He said, yeah. He said, give me that phone. What transpired next, nobody prepared me for in all of my life. I heard him saying, listen now, you're not hurting me. You're not really hurting me. We live in the same house. We sleep in the same bed. We eat out of the same pot. You and I grew up like brothers. How you could disrespect me so? That was my next thing that I heard. Man, I could have dropped off my chair, my foot, my everything. It came right down to one thing.
Disrespect.
He felt he was disrespected, and he picked up his gun to be able to say, you can't disrespect me like that. And a whole war nearly take place because of this. Well, that night, I left up there around 8 o'clock that night. I jumped on a plane next morning early. But at least what had happened there had brought it to a truce, because we were able to get them. And through the phone they spoke. And by the end of the conversation, you could see there was a love again and an end to the animosity. And somehow, through a miracle that night, there was at least a ceasefire between the two communities. And I was stunned. I was stunned. The second one was after I'd done a whole pulling together of 4 of the gangs in the community. We met in Assumption Parish Hall. I call it the Assumption Accord. We met there, and 4 of the gangs who were at war that time, we brought them together. And after we got the accord, about a month or so after, one of the lieutenants fired off a gun in the community, grazed a little girl. Thank God she didn't get anything serious, just a little thing on a graze on her hand. Thank God. So when I see the guy, I say, but what is wrong with you? Your boss say we are no shooting. The 4 bosses say together we ain't shooting. I say, as the leader in this community, there is no, how you could dare to pick up a gun? He said, well, Father, they can't, they ain't want to hear. So who had a feeling, they had to understand. I said, how you mean? He said, no, I had to send them a message. I said, wait, you fire a gun to send a message? He said, but that's what I'm trying to tell you. I said, you pick up your gun to communicate a message to the other guy? He said, but Father, that's what I'm trying to tell you. The gun was a tool of communications because he did not have language or a method to express that he was feeling disrespected by the other guy. And because he was feeling disrespected, what he did was pick up the only tool of communications he knew. It wasn't a pen, it wasn't a typewriter, it wasn't a fax, a tweet, or nothing. It was a gun.
Yeah.
And through that, I got them to talk about other ways. And through that, I got them speaking to each other. And through that, peace broke out in Gonzales.
So the gun was the tool of communication.
The gun became a tool because it did not have language to communicate.
You said if a young man does not know how to communicate difficult emotions, the gun is the tool of choice. And we are dealing with a problem of literacy.
It is a basic language problem. Because if you do me something that I don't like, I'm not going for a gun, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Because I have the language to say it. But in a community where there is underdevelopment and very poor education and very poor interpersonal communication skills, etc., the gun becomes a tool of communications. And that was one of the biggest shocks to me. And what it was communicating, you have disrespected me. And you can't disrespect me because I was a big man. That's the message, eh? Po-po. When you hear po-po, that's the message. You have disrespected, and you better not because I was a big man. I'm saying this as the extreme. But come back from the extreme. Come back to what do you hear on the radio talk shows?
Yeah.
What do you hear?
I hear disrespect. Disrespect for each other. You hear name calling. You hear it's them and we. And it's not us. It's not we belong to the same country, you know.
No.
And just like you're saying, you talked about the two gang leaders. We slept in the same bed. We ate out of the same pot. And in the same way, we hear over the talk shows, people, hear this, you're working in the same office.
Yes.
But because I belong to this party, and I am red and you are yellow, we destroy each other.
Yes.
Right? Our children going to the same schools.
We living in the same community.
We live in, and there is a total, there is disrespect.
There is name calling, there is disrespect, there is a kind of a hatred and an anger in our society.
To me, when I listen to these guys, I say, but don't you all see that you all are stirring up hatred?
That's what it is.
You're stirring up, you are actually stirring the pot of hatred and discrimination and prejudice.
And that is where our real challenge is. That is where the real challenge is. That there is something that is boiling down below, and we not hearing that. I want to try back this thing again.
You have it?
I think I might have it, and I want to ask that we switch it because this composition was done specially for my installation, and I listened to it recently, and it really gave me a chill.
This is our land. Come, my brother, come, my sister. Let us build a nation together. Education, that is the foundation. Our rising population needs sound education. out of yesterday's rejection, onward to a new perfection. From a hunger came a field, from the field we shaped the steel. Out of a muddy pond, 10,000 flowers bloom. I would like to see the day when love would come to stay. One love, one love. Where the Indian, the African, the Chinese, the white man, first people all live together as one. In this wonderland of Calypso, in this wonderland of steel band, where I was born. God bless our nation.
He was singing Sandra. There's a missing generation. There was voices from the ghetto. There was all these other words that were pulled together in an incredible melody that really spoke to the challenge in the country right now. And that challenge that we were facing, that we had to find a way to, somebody had to pray. And what I experienced in the installation was this call, this incredible sense of responsibility for having to be at this time in the country with the kind of challenges that we were facing. And it was speaking to the same levels of respect and disrespect that we had as a that we be talking to here.
You see, we've not taught our people how to have difficult conversations,
No.
how to disagree, how to engage others while respecting them as persons and while upholding their human dignity and human rights. Again, this is not a problem of those of the lower rung of the ladder. Now, I'm glad that you mentioned that. This is a societal problem, is what you're saying, because we're hearing it from, you see, a gang seeks to increase its turf, to get a better deal for its members, to protect them and to ensure that they get the best life while expending the least effort to take care of them if they are in trouble and to support their family if anything goes wrong and they die.
And so a gang operates in a particular way. But when I look at the country, you know, sometimes I see the business community operating like a gang, you know. Parliament could operate like a gang. You know, sometimes churches, mosques, temples operate like gangs. Sometimes the politicians operating like gangs. At one time when I was in Gonzales, the police came through, and the way they treated some young fellas walking on the street, I said to the policeman after, I said, you know, I knew this community. We have 5 gangs in and around this community. But we now have a 6th gang because you are operating just like a gang. And if you operate like a gang, then you are contributing to the gang mentality of the community and creating a problem. Well, that was not too
It was well received.
But what is a gang culture? What is a gang culture? A gang culture really is a culture that is very self-serving and is not interested at all in the common good. All I'm caring about is that I protect my own.
My turf.
Not only my turf and my people. And I give them the best deal possible. And everybody else sucks out. but I have to make sure and give the best deal to my people. So there's no consideration about a common good, no consideration about medium and long-term effects, no consideration about what anybody else might need. What the consideration is about my group and getting the best from my group. Is that only the Laventille gangs we're talking about?
No.
And once a community loses sight of the common good, because remember, your rights end where my hand begins, you know.
Say that one again.
Your rights end where my hand begins. Because yes, you have a right to stretch, but your right to stretch had to stop just before my hand. Otherwise, your rights are starting to infringe me.
Yeah.
So this gang mentality, which is tied into the culture of disrespect that we have, is creating an avalanche in the community, because it's not just that we have gangs, which we have, that are doing illicit trade, which we have, which are a problem and need to be dealt with in the most sophisticated way possible to deal with it. But we have to understand that any gang we take down will take up 5 more, because the root of the problem is springing up the gang. It is coming up from the culture itself, because of the levels of disrespect, because we are making young men feel powerless and hopeless and helpless, and because we are creating this kind of culture on the one hand, and when they look on at the television and they look on at the radio, they listen on to the radio, they look on at people in high places, and what they see is the same protection for themselves and the lack of care for the other and the common good. That becomes the culture, and that's what fuels a gang culture in the country.
I want to go back, because I want to take you say we cannot fix the problem of crime until we are ready to fix the problem of exaggerated freedoms. What do you mean by that? This, you say that have become a license plaguing our country. What is exaggerated freedoms?
That I can get on a radio station and I could call people's name with no evidence and shame people with no evidence and speak hatred with no compunction and call you out with no good rhyme or reason and disrespect people. You know, I've heard on some broadcasts in Trinidad and Tobago calling a prime minister by his first name. He is no longer a citizen of the country. He's an office holder also. And if we can't give people the basic respect that is due to the office that they hold, then there's something fundamentally wrong with what we're doing. And once we go about this level of disrespect in the way we speak, that's exaggerated freedoms. Yes, we have a freedom, but every freedom has a responsibility. And what we have done as a nation is we have looked at how we can exaggerate our freedoms, but we have not yet looked at how we need to hold responsibilities and take responsibility for the rights and the freedoms that we have been given as a nation. And because of that, everybody's rights are being infringed by everybody else.
But I hear people say, but listen, I calling him so and so. I'm not calling anybody's names right here, because I don't want to continue with this whole thing of disrespect. But he lying to me. So if he lying to me, he disrespected me. So if he disrespected me, I gonna call him so and so. I'm gonna call him by his first name, or I'll call him by his last name, without saying Mr. Prime Minister or Mr. Minister of National Security or Mr. or Miss the Leader of Opposition,
or Mrs. Prime Minister,
or Mrs. Prime Minister,
or Mrs. Leader of Opposition.
Yeah. So the whole thing is, man, if you could disrespect me, I will disrespect you back. Which we're going back to the same gang culture,
right? And that's what we have. So in that culture of disrespect, I am proposing that we have pushed so hard on freedom that we've gone off the edge, and now we created a culture where everybody's freedom has impinged on everybody's rights. And now we have a culture where your freedom is now impinging on my rights.
But you know, I want to go back to singing Sandra.
Sandra, yes.
Cupboard always bare and scanty. 10 people in a one-bedroom shanty. Forced to sell on the pavement. No vacancies, no employment. Can't tell firecracker from gunshot. Blood does flow when things get hot. Afraid to look out my window to hear voices from the ghetto. You know, I mean, to me, you know, it is unbelievable when you talk about the ghetto culture, when we talk about freedoms, when we talk about lack of respect. Because even there, you know, Singing Sandra talks about gang leader watching a young girl child.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, her belly getting big. You understand?
Yeah,
So in that whole thing too,
so how
is
do
that
we rebuild
disrespect?
a nation?
Is that disrespect for our own children?
Yes.
You know, our own selves, our own bodies?
Yes. And how do we rebuild a nation? And that's really where we need to go. Because, okay, we know we have a problem of disrespect. We have a culture, this kind of a gang culture. And that's not just about the gangs, it's about all of us. But let's go again.
He said we've elected many governments. I mean, we are changing governments every election. Election, right? On the promise that they will fix the crime problem. Because the last government went because of a problem with crime.
And the last government came in because the government before that couldn't fix the problem with crime. And it went so from ever to ever.
Right. So
20 years now.
None has delivered permanent, sustainable results when it comes to fixing crime.
And we could see that in the murder numbers that have been going steadily up, despite what resource we've thrown at the problem.
So you said a different model is needed.
Yes. You know, there's a professor in Malaysia I met, and he talked to me about what they're doing in Malaysia. Now, Malaysia is bigger than us, 33 million people. It's multicultural, multi-ethnic. And like us, several races living in this space, having to coexist, having to share, and share resources, share all kinds of things. And there's great poverty in the midst of great wealth and development. Now, his thing is that, you know, what he did was rather than throw the tidbits around, he did the hard research and went down to the communities where the real problems existed. And then, you know, he had McKinsey and World Bank come to do a development project for Malaysia. And he pushed himself into it. And when he heard their proposals, he said to them, what you're doing can't work. And he said, Prime Minister, if you take what they're doing, you'll throw us back for 10 years. He said, well, who are you to say that? He said, well, forget about who I am. This is why I could say that. And he started producing data for them.
Yeah.
And he demonstrated from his data that what their assumptions were wrong to start with. And so they gave him the contract to produce the developmental plan. What's important here is that he looked at the problem with depth, and he looked not just at, you know, the gang, but he asked another question: why? Why? And when he interrogated it, there was a group in the society who had been left behind in education, left behind in jobs, left behind in learning, left behind in income, and therefore left behind socially and left behind in terms of social development. And that group that had been left behind became the group that was doing the gangs, the drugs, the murders, and creating the mayhem in Malaysia. In Malaysia, it happened to be the East Indians that were underdeveloped. But what is interesting is that rather than naming the problem as a gang problem or as an Indian problem, he named the problem as a problem of underdevelopment. And because he named it as a problem of underdevelopment, he raised the challenge to the country that, you know, we cannot get our country to the safety we want to get it to without doing a significant development plan for this community.
So he identified the community.
Well, everybody knew the community,
Yeah.
but everybody saw the community as a problem.
Okay.
What he saw was that the underdevelopment of the community was the problem,
Not the community.
not the community.
All right.
So if you think of the traditional areas where we have gangs right now, Lavantil, Diego Martin, Caranage, Maloney,
Yes.
even Enterprise, Bangladesh,
Yeah.
all those are poor communities. And all of those are communities that have been underdeveloped for the last however long. So because too many people in those communities are left underdeveloped in an intergenerational way, those communities have found a way to earn money that is now coming back to haunt us. And that's Elander's thing. You know, there's a missing generation. And if we don't find them, they will find us someday. Because we have failed the development of the communities that where the crime is coming from. Because we have failed them. We have allowed the crime to fester and the gang culture to not only be a gang culture with words, but a gang culture, in fact, with guns and bullets and death and drugs.
Yeah, but you hear so many times, Archbishop J, and I want to put this thing out to everybody here. We hear this, that they can't buy and bring in the guns. We hear this, that it has to be, you know, I mean, what is called it? The big fish. Is the big fish. Mr. Big. And the Mr. Big is living in those places. So where is these? So to me, it has to be to somebody's benefit that these people remain underdeveloped, these people remain poor, these people remain in poverty and in the ghettos, right? And we could remain nice and safe.
And if we want to fix the problem, every one of us as Trinidad and Tobago has to look at how we're speaking to each other. We have to look at how we are respecting each other. But we also now have to do a national plan for development for the communities where the crime is the highest, because where the crime is the highest is where the underdevelopment is the highest also. And therefore, we have to have a national plan for development for these communities. So in Malaysia, the research pointed out there was not an ethnic problem at its root, or crime problem, or gun problem, or drug problem. At the root, it was a development problem. There were communities that did not have access to the basic necessities. But that is true in Gonzales, in John John, in Picton, in St. Babs, in Diego Martin, in Bagatelle, in everywhere where we have the problem. So rather than thinking that we could take the problem out, we can't. We have to curtail the problem. And that's where law enforcement has to have their role. But we have to develop this problem out. We have to make sure that we get the best schools into this community. We have to make sure that the children in this community get the best opportunities, that we give them the best ways out of poverty, so that every household in those communities, 1 or 2 children come out of poverty through education and through learning, and then we'll pull the others out one by one after.
We're going to open the lines right now. We would like to hear your kind of contribution towards His Grace's article, A Culture of Disrespect, and kind of like his thoughts on how we could get ourselves out of this. And I know you have plenty people outside there listening on. What do you think? How do we get out of this culture of disrespect? And yes, disrespect, our politicians are disrespecting these communities by not putting in these basic things that they need to have to rise.
Water. We don't have water in every house. But in Malaysia, they came together in a bipartisan plan and both sides of the parliament came together.
Both sides of the parliament, eh?
And worked at this plan, so that the plan became a national plan for development, and they made a big piece of that plan. 40% at the bottom end of the society had to be lifted out of poverty. That's one of their big goals. They started not by doing oil, gas, no, we had to lift this segment out of poverty. But I think you have a call.
Good evening, welcome to Shepherd's Corner.
Hello, good night.
Good night, how are you doing?
Yes, I am the guy who normally calls, who is the recently baptized guy. But I want to share my thoughts on this, is that the 11th commandment that Jesus has left, that needs to be more, to be preached more and to be let out more. And it can be let out more by church having, we have to start with our own and then it reach out to others. And we have to start by having banners on the church, on the walls or on the gates that love each other as how I have loved you.
Yeah.
And that love, the whole key to everything is love for each other. And when Mass is finished, they say, go in peace. It's time now, it should
To
be
bring that peace.
love as how, live and love as how I have loved you. And that is how Mass is supposed to be ended each time. And that is where all
Thank you,
cure
brother.
and all ills will take care no matter which part of the world.
Thank you, brother. Preach on. and that's where we have failed as church, huh? We have failed as church because we haven't brought that love into the community. We've allowed the culture of the country to infect us, as opposed to us bringing a culture of love, harmony, and respect to the whole country. And he's right. It is only when we understand that commandment of love and we're willing to live that, that we can start lifting our families, our groups, our parishes, our churches, but our nation out from the level of disrespect that we are in.
We have another call. Good evening, welcome to Shepherd's Corner.
Good night. Good night, Archbishop.
Good night, how are you doing?
Derek.
Good night.
My question is, strangely enough, the Prime Minister mentioned something last night in connection with parents not sending their children to church and getting the ethics out of the church. And as a father, as a guidance figure, I think fathers are a major problem in our society and in terms of what's happening in our society at this point in time as a figure role. What do you, as a church, would you insist in us doing as a community to improve or to let us it's so I mean my words are so in dire mood at this point in time because of what's happening in our society at this point in time, and clearly it's because of a father figure not being there.
That's a big part of it. And that's why we launched the men's movement. To foster men who are mentoring men to become great fathers and help lift this nation. Because once you have mom trying to take care of multiple children, we're going to have poverty. And where are the fathers? And that has been a major challenge.
I think that if each father of a home that is, no family is perfect, but if we who have heard that clarion call, could adopt one family,
it would be different.
It would be different. Or adopt one boy in a family. That's going to make a difference.
That could be different too.
You talk about this multi-year approach because we want this thing fixed today.
No, but this is going to take us, we've taken 40, 50 years to reach to here. 70 years. This is going to take us 30 years to bend this corner properly. But it requires of a commitment now across the aisle in Parliament, across the nation, across race and skin, because the bullet don't know what race, skin, ethnicity, religion, political party you belong to. The bullet is indiscriminate. And we have to understand that we have to be able to go against all this discrimination and all this division that we've had. We have to come together as the citizens of this country to build a national platform which would allow love to flow and which would allow us to then focus on the areas in this country that are most underdeveloped and help those areas to be lifted out of poverty, so that in 15 and 20 and 25 years from now, we're not talking about this problem again. We've been talking about this for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And it's only been getting worse. Now let's plan for the next 25 years. And in 25 years, we could bend the corner. But it needs a national consciousness of how we change and how we speak, and in the limiting of our freedoms. Go ahead.
You know, you said our challenge. Now, I know we have a call. We'll be right with you. Our challenge, high murder rate, drugs and crime affect every citizen. It affects our quality of life.
Yes.
Let us at least be honest with the diagnosis.
Correct.
Right? We have a poverty, communications, and an exaggerated freedom problem in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, because the problem is a poverty problem. It's communications in the sense of picking up the gun as a tool of communications, and it's exaggerated freedom in the sense that we have not taught each other boundaries and self-control. And so, because there's no boundaries and self-control, I get vexed with you, I obliterate you with words. Now, if I get a gun and I get vexed with you, I obliterate you with the gun. How do we teach a measured freedom, but also a heightened sense of responsibility? What we have given up as a nation is that nobody in this nation talks about responsibility, and nobody talks about the common good, which is the good of all of us. For the sake of all of us, each of us has to be willing to give up some of our freedoms. For the sake of all of us.
But you making joke about Trinidad is the land of freedom. You want me to give up some of my freedom?
Well, if you don't give it up, brother, it will give you up.
So you say communications is not just in spelling, reading, and writing, but in giving basic respect to others, even when, or especially when, we have different opinions.
That's right. Because if we can't negotiate different opinions and still respect each other, then we can't expect the gangman who does not have the education we have to have a difference of opinion and still respect the other. When murder is the most extreme form of disrespect, you know. Think about it. It's the most extreme form of disrespect. Because if I cuss you, I disrespect you. If I pelt stone at you, I disrespect you and I hurt you. But if I murder you, I'm disrespecting you in the most fundamental way. I'm saying that your life is cheap, you have no right to exist, and it is my right and prerogative to snuff you out. That is the most extreme form of disrespect.
We have a call. Good evening, welcome to Shepherd's Corner.
Good evening, Your Grace and Uncle Derek.
Hey!
Oh boy. How are you doing?
How are you?
We good, you know, but we're going to keep this a little tight because we have a few things to do in the next 8 minutes.
Tell us what you'd like to contribute.
Well, today I want to speak about disrespect. And the first thing that comes to mind is that my granny always tells me that when it takes two to make a confusion, not one, two.
That's right.
And
Take two to tango.
That is why we have murderers and thieves now, because from lack of disrespect and training, lack of respect and training.
Well, Granny got it right.
Absolutely right.
And you have it.
And you learn that well, okay? And I want you now to make sure that everyone you have conversations with, you as wonderful and as respectful as you are right now. You could promise me that?
I think he's gone.
Okay. We have a national ecosystem. So every society has an ecosystem. Some societies have an ecosystem that are based on integrity and respect and all these other things. I think our national ecosystem is based on greed, disrespect, corruption, and what's in it for me. I think that's what's driving our whole society from top to bottom. This greed, this making money, which has created a super wealthy group and a super poor group, is driving our society. And that's the problem, because whenever greed, money, and selfishness drives a society, violence is what breaks out of that society. And then me saying so, Aristotle said that 2,700 years ago, that the result of putting money as the highest good is that violence becomes the problem of that society. What is the problem we have? What is the reason for it? Well, we put a false god in the place. We need a new ecosystem. And because that ecosystem is fueling the gang culture and fueling the disrespect, because if I am more important than everybody else, then I will disrespect you. When I understand Ubuntu, I am because we are. When I understand that my well-being is based on our well-being.
My well-being is
based on our well-being.
Okay.
That my being good and prosperous is based on all of us being good and prosperous. When I understand that, which is a whole other way of seeing the world, which is the Bible way of seeing the world, when I understand that, then I start to understand that I can't go and grab as I want and do the corruption and get rich or die trying, because that is creating the problem that we're facing in our country right now.
And you are calling for a national conversation.
A national conversation and a plan to committing to some common values to facilitate the development for those on the margins. Because we can't solve the challenge by bringing more guns to the street. That will curtail the problem. It will suppress the problem, but it will not cure the cancer that is eating at the soul of the nation. We need to curtail, like if I had a cancer in my hand, I'm not going to let it just mushroom out. I will curtail it, but I have to get to the source of the cancer. And I'm saying that the gang violence that we're seeing, that is because of all the disrespect. It has to be curtailed. But let's get down to the DNA now. Let's get down to the DNA and let's do a different DNA. Because each of us has to choose to limit our freedoms if we want a society whose DNA will produce peace, harmony, and prosperity for all of our citizens. We have to understand that the prosperity of one has to be dependent upon the prosperity of all. The safety of one is dependent upon the safety of all. I have to want the development of every citizen in the country if I want safety, peace, and harmony and prosperity for myself. And the problem is we keep thinking we could grab this stuff for ourselves and we would be okay, because I'll have enough money to keep myself safe. No, we are undermining the whole fabric of the society by what we've been doing. Our approach has been a terrible approach. And it's not just our approach in Trinidad and Tobago. The whole Caribbean, the Western world has been into this approach for a long while.
Do you think that we could have our leaders, and I always look towards the leadership, because to me, the leadership, the leaders should be the ones driving the process.
Yes.
It's like Jesus.
Yes.
I came to serve, not to be served.
Correct.
And by his way, by what he did, he showed us what we must do.
Well, okay, but the leaders we have come out of a society that we have. The fish comes out of the water it's in. The water is poison, the fish going to be poisoned.
We must have some good leaders somewhere inside.
Of course we do. But let us start with you and me. Let's start there. And let's start with every one of us. Let's start there. Let's start by hearing the gospel that our brother spoke about when he called. Yeah. That love, 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 love. The one commandment, love one another as I have loved you. But let's also hear the problem that we have is not, and we must never name call, and we must never bring it down to a race or to an area, we have to bring it down to the truth. We have a developmental problem in this country. We have communities that have been neglected and that have been underdeveloped for the last 70, 80, 90 years. And we now have to put a focused plan of development. In Malaysia, they spent millions of dollars. They created a plan and they put millions of dollars behind the development of those who were most on the fringe of the society. And by doing that, they're getting some positive results now. It's not, nowhere is perfect. But I think we have to figure out a better way of dealing with the problem than how we have been doing it before.
What's your key message?
Key message is we have a poverty, communications, and exaggerated freedom problem. And that is causing a rising murder rate in our country.
Action step. We have to have some kind of action.
Well, you know, we have a March for Life and a 40 days of praying for life. Praying the rosary for life for the next 40 days. It's beginning on July 31st.
So we'll be telling everybody watching.
Everybody, every household, every community, everywhere. Let us get together and let us from July 31st, let us pray for life. And pray for respect for life. Pray for respect for what it is we really want in this country. What we want is you respecting me, I respecting you, we respecting each other, and we're building a community where love and respect, peace and harmony and prosperity starts to flourish. Look in your Catholic news, see all the events for Respect for Life, 40 days of prayer, and let's join in those 40 days of prayer.
Now, we have about 2 minutes, a minute and a half. You know, so
30 seconds action.
Grab. We want you all to grab your Catholic news, see what it is His Grace is talking about. We have to get rid of this culture of disrespect. And he gives us a scripture reading, John 10:10.
I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. The thief comes to steal and to destroy, but I have come that you may have life and have it to the full.
Give us a closing prayer.
Father, we thank you for this beloved country, Trinidad and Tobago. And we pray in this beloved country that each citizen, each one of us, and especially us who know you, our Lord Jesus Christ, that we, Lord, will bend our hearts to build a culture of peace in this country through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.